Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 315th film from 2020. It's the South Korean science fiction psychological thriller The Call or Call. It's directed by Lee Chung-hyun and stars Park Shin-hye, Jeon Jong-seo, Kim Sung-ryung and Lee. I'm Jesse. I'm your host today. Thanks for joining me for this international film on Netflix. As always, if you haven't seen this film and you're keen on checking it out, I would highly recommend giving us a pause and coming back later on, especially for this film. This film, I think, is best if you go in absolutely cold and have no idea. So give us a pause, come back later on, because we will spoil this as we go, especially with the start of our show, the Fast Flicks. So this is where we do a quick little summary of what the film's all about. So this one is about two women who find themselves connected through a phone 20 years apart. Intriguing. Hopefully that's a good little premise without giving too much away. Like I said, this film, I think you probably just need to get in and watch it. How did this end up on Netflix? So there's not an awful lot for this film. This is based on the 2011 British and Puerto Rican film called The Caller, so it follows along the lines of that film. Principal photography for this film began on January 3rd, 2019 and finished on April the 2nd, 2019. The film was going to be released theatrically, but was cancelled, as we've seen with a lot of films at this stage because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The director did say, "I have no plans for a sequel. I'm pretty sure that this will remain a standalone film." So that's where it's at. This was released in South Korea, I think, at the end of March of 2020, before hitting Netflix worldwide on the 30th of November 2020. It was pretty well received, filmed in South Korea, but well received awards-wise. Had 4 wins and 11 nominations across a variety of award ceremonies in Asia. The translations for this film across the world: in Chinese, it's called Telephone, and also had another title of Clue of Death. In Spanish, it's called The Phone, and in Croatian, Hungarian, and Russian, it's called A Call from the Past. So all to do with the telephone, the call, that sort of thing. I think the tagline that's on the poster for this probably gives away a little bit too much. So the tagline is, "A call from a serial killer. She'll begin to hunt your past." That gives away so much that it's not revealed in the film until about halfway through that we have a serial killer involved. So for me, I'm not a big fan of that tagline. I think it gives away too much. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? On Rotten Tomatoes, it actually sits at 100%. That's right, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's on 13 reviews, so it is fresh. The audience, a little bit lower, 78%. That's on more than 250 ratings. On IMDb, sits at a 7.1 out of 10 on 44,000 ratings, so that's extremely high. Letterboxd, 3.6 out of 5, high again. That's on 92,500 ratings, but it's been logged by 119,000 people. Metacritic, it doesn't have a critic consensus, but it does have an audience consensus. It's at a 7.4 out of 10 on 18 reviews, so that is in that green system of the traffic light system. Positives, positives, positives. What about my early thoughts? This is great. I think it's so hard to talk about this film because of the different structures of time used throughout, but if you stick with it and concentrate on this film, I think it's well worth it, even if there's a very iffy decision made by the filmmakers at the end. So that's where we're at. Let's talk about the characters. This film focuses on 2 characters. One character set in 1999, one set in the sort of present day, 20 years apart. This is how it works, really, is between these 2 girls on the phone call and their sort of ability to communicate and help each other's pasts and futures. And so the first character, I guess, is almost the present day girl, Jeon Jong-seo. She is, I guess, the main protagonist that we follow the most. Her dad passed away in a house fire, and she blames her mum for this. So she's got this rocky relationship with her mum, even though her mum is sick and in hospital. And throughout the film, we sort of see that there's probably other understandings of that event with her dad. And obviously as well, there's lots of different time travel almost elements that probably impact this and her relationships and her character and that idea of family that we see in this film as well. And then the alter person, or the person in the past, is Young Suk, and she looks like, they want the audience to empathize with her because she's living with a stepmother who is really brutal towards her. I think she's, demonic, I guess, or possessed, and her biological mother's in a mental institution. And they do give early off that by putting this line in about her mother being in a mental institution, as an audience, you sort of think, okay, maybe there is something mentally off with her to start with, especially when, there's this moment where she sort of attacks the stepmother that she says, I feel like I've been reborn. So that idea there too as well. So it's these 2 girls sort of, changing each other's life almost throughout this film. The director, Chung-hyun Lee. This is his first feature, a few shorts, some TV work as well, and another Netflix original film in 2023, which is called Ballerina. So we'll get to that eventually, but very intrigued to see what sort of other work this director does. But let's talk about some scenes. What are some scenes that I liked? What didn't I like? So I mean, it's a bit hard, I guess, to talk about scenes specifically because it's just so it is edited so well, I guess I would say, because you're cutting backwards and forwards between locations, settings, times, and it all comes together quite nicely. So for me, there's this scene where Jung-suk is saving Seo-yeon's father, and I mentioned before there was this house fire. He passes away, she saves him, and then the moment that we see Seo-yeon go downstairs, she's been, gone back to her family home, which is sort of dilapidated and it's all falling apart. And she gets the phone call that her dad's survived this house fire, and she goes downstairs and the house, it's no longer all boarded up. It's not dark. It's not gloomy. There's this warm lighting. She goes outside and sees her parents, sees her mum, who's not in hospital, sees her sort of like, wow, this is amazing, and then actually sees her dad. So, she cries, she hugs. That was just really nice, a really nice moment. I didn't mind the moments of Seo-yeon and Jung-suk almost building this friendship over the phone, and especially through music and that ability of music to be multi-generational, I guess. So that was cool. I think it was Sung-ryung, he was the strawberry guy. He plays an important role in this film, but I just felt so bad for him, literally doing the nice thing of going around giving neighbors strawberries, and he ends up being killed, and he didn't actually do anything wrong. And the follow-up from Jung-suk just losing it with bags with body parts in the kitchen sink, that's just such a memorable scene, I guess. There's a moment where the young child version of Seo-yeon rocks up with her dad at Jung-suk's house, and that realization of what was going to happen to them, and then seeing it all fold out in the tunnel in the current time as well, with the dad disappearing in the car, and oh man, wow, that was a really cool scene. And finally, I liked the setup from Seo-yeon to try and get Jung-suk at this gas explosion and to try and wipe her out to solve her problems, and then she survives and then sort of calls her back and tells Seo-yeon that it was her fault her dad died in that explosion at the house. It was just really nice visuals, like that idea of gas explosions, and really cool. There's nothing really that I didn't like. Oh, sorry. I do tell a bit of a fib. We'll talk about this very soon, but the ending of the film is something that I want to discuss. But let's talk about the themes, the ideas. There's a lot about regret and trying to fix mistakes, but sometimes this can lead to bigger problems being created. There's the idea of, taking the time to forgive, forget, move on, being with the people who are still left surrounding you too. I think that's an important thing that leads into family too, and that idea of family in South Korean culture. It is everything. You can be lost without them, but also that idea almost of oppressive parents and how teenagers often feel their parents are oppressing them, but at the same time, family is everything. And there's that idea too of paying back favors or owing debt, and how do you live with that, and what do you do to ensure that you do that? So some interesting little things to think about. What did I take away from this film? I think the two leading ladies in this film, they're great. There's a chance that if this film was given to people with lesser talent, it could have come off as sort of over the top or campy almost, but they do such a good job, especially seeing a majority of this film. They're almost performing by themselves too. Like, they don't actually get to work side by side in camera. So I think that was really impressive from the two of them. All right, questions, ponderings, ideas, thoughts. This is where I'm going to talk about that post-credit scene. It's this big twist. And I'm not sure I liked it. I think it would have been so nice for Seo-yeon to have this happy ending, but then we sort of see the mum dissipate, and then we sort of work out that she's still, she's captive in that basement, and I'm not sure I'm sold on it. Not sure I'm sold on it at all. So I'm intrigued to see what other people think. I think that Seo-yeon, we see that she loses her phone at the start on an adventure or travels back home, and she's trying to track down her mobile phone, and she calls her phone, and people answer, and they try to blackmail her to get it back. Like, what happened there? It just felt like a really big loose end. The evil stepmother, like, obviously you've got that idea of family, you've got the evil stepmother. Was she actually evil, or did she know what was going to come? Because it was that idea that, her stepdaughter's possessed and she needed to fix her. So maybe she was onto things, and maybe she's not that evil. She wanted to prevent evil from happening, and maybe she wasn't actually evil. This is a sci-fi film, and some of the stuff isn't really answered. Like, what allowed the two women to communicate through a phone? Like, was it some supernatural, paranormal thing? I don't know. What price would you pay to know what happens in your future too? Like, that idea, what lengths would you go to ensure that, you can see forward and make sure things are good? And then that same thing, Seo-yeon, like, is she actually a liar? Is she a manipulator? Did she know that she'd actually killed her father when she was young, or had the trauma of the event wiped that away? And like, was that blame she was putting on her actual mother unfounded? I'm not sure. I'm interested. And that idea too of gummy bears, we see gummy bears throughout the film as like a visual motif. I thought that was very interesting. I'm not sure. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. Like, I understand that maybe it was a visual to sort of show us that Jung-suk, bit all their heads off when she got agitated. I'm not sure. I'm intrigued. I'm ready to wrap it up. We give the film a rating out of 5. Like, for me, this is an excellent film. It's well worth your time to give it a shot. You've got to stick with it, though, and you've got to focus and concentrate most of the film to sort of keep track of what's going on. And it's really good. The characters feel real, and you care about them and their actions, which is a pretty big achievement for a film that doesn't actually go into too many backstories or things like that. So really well done. As I said, I think the less you know about this film, the better. I'm giving this a 4 out of 5. Solid film from me. We're on socials. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The question I wanted to ask was, what would you give up to change your past? Is there anything you'd give up to change something that's happened in the past? I don't believe in this motto or this idea, because I think, you learn from your mistakes. You learn from your past, and then you move on and you develop going forward. So that's my take on that one. We're back next week. Next week, we have the 2020 Filipino drama called Finding Agnes. This one's directed by Marla Ancheta and stars Yeltsin Bay, Sue Ramirez, and Sandy Andalong. Awesome. That's what we got next week. Hope you're interested. Give it a shot. Give it a watch. As always, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next week.